This is the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When Jesus saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then Jesus said to him, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
When I was in 7th grade, I had a really embarrassing moment, and I'm going to tell you about it as long as you promise not to laugh at me. It still hurts after all these years. It was in the school cafeteria. We were having fish sticks for lunch, and you know how you get those little packets of sauce at school lunch? Those things are notoriously hard to open, especially the tartar sauce, I think. I couldn't get my tartar sauce packet open, so I did what any reasonable 7th grade boy would do. I stabbed it with my fork. And then it opened. Rather abruptly. Tartar sauce sprayed in the air. A bunch of girls at the neighboring table screamed in horror. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part is it got on me. Mostly in my hair. My hair was streaked with tartar sauce. And everyone saw, and everyone pointed, and everyone laughed. And I was so ashamed. I hope you've had those kinds of embarrassing experiences before, not just because it will make me feel better about my own embarrassing moment, but because I want you to think about that feeling. The feeling of being ashamed, of people pointing, of being noticed for all the wrong reasons. You and I feel those awful things occasionally, but in the time of Jesus, someone who was a leper felt them all the time, you see. For a leper, your whole life was one of being embarrassed and pointed at and shunned. Now, there are a few things we should know about lepers in the time of Jesus and their place in the world, so we can understand the challenges they faced every day. To begin with, what was a leper even? Well, a leper, someone with leprosy, was someone suffering from a skin condition of one sort or another. Leprosy probably referred to a whole lot of different skin ailments. Some of them contagious, some of them not. Some of them that were serious, some of them less serious, but all of them were visible. People could see you when you had leprosy, and so people knew you were ill. And they assumed this illness made you defiled, unclean, and pitiful. Having leprosy meant that everyone wanted to stay away lest they get it too. And so because of this, lepers often lived on the outside of cities, away from people. The law required them, in fact, to do this because they were unclean. And the law also required lepers to warn other people about their condition. If a leper saw someone coming their way, they were supposed to cry out, "Unclean, unclean!" And by this, others would know to stay away and not be defiled. Can you imagine that? You see, the challenges lepers faced weren't just social, they were religious too. And that's why there were certain rules about how they could get clean. If a leper was fortunate enough to get better, to get rid of his leprosy, then a priest had to say he was clear to sign off on it, so to speak. And it was only after this official clearance by the priest that a leper could go back into the community as a normal person. So that's interesting, you may say, but why does all that matter? Well, it explains a few details in this gospel story in Luke, for one thing. Like the way the story says the 10 lepers approached Jesus but were keeping their distance. You see, they're following the rules for lepers. Or the fact that Jesus says to them, "Go show yourselves to the priests." Jesus is giving them healing, and so Jesus wants them to go and make it official so they can return to normal life. But understanding more about what it means to be a leper also helps us to see, I think, the great gift Jesus is giving these 10 lepers when he heals them. Jesus heals them. It's a bit of an indirect healing. Jesus sends them on their way, and as they went, they were made clean. But Jesus heals them, restoring their physical well-being, making them well. And in doing so, Jesus also restores them into community, getting rid of what kept them separated from others so they could be whole. And look what a difference this makes. In the beginning of the story, the lepers are crying out, "Have mercy." They were probably also crying out, "Unclean, unclean," as well. And in the end, the leper who comes back to thank Jesus now is praising God with a loud voice. From shouts of unworthiness to shouts of praise. This is the restoring power of Jesus. This was the restoring power of Jesus among people then, healing, freeing, bringing people back into community. And this is the restoring power of Jesus now among us, healing, freeing, and bringing us back into community. Where do we see that restoring power of Jesus at work among us? We're talking more than just embarrassing moments now. We're talking about places where the suffering receive mercy, where the shunned are welcomed, where the broken are made whole. How about a healthcare professional who works among sick people? People whose illnesses would make others try and stay away. And that work, that holy work, brings a restoring hope. Or how about foster parents who welcome into their home an outcast, a child beaten down by neglect or toiling in the system? And that welcome is a sign of the restoring love of God. Or how about a student who goes out of their way to befriend someone, maybe someone who is laughed at or noticed for all the wrong reasons? And that friendship is a gift that brings joyful restoration. You see, restoration is both our story and our call. We who are far off from God are drawn close by the mercy of Jesus. God makes us whole and restores us to community again and again. And here in this community, where we know and receive the grace of God, we are nourished and sent to go make others well. That's what we say at the end of worship each time we gather, isn't it? Go in peace, serve the Lord. Go in peace, that is, go no longer at odds with God, no longer on the outs with others, no longer embarrassed or ashamed, but go in the peace that Jesus has given you. And serve the Lord. Serve the one who has made us well by doing what Jesus does, by sharing hope, love, joy, and the restoring power of God. From confessions of unworthiness to songs of praise. That's what we do here. That's how Jesus transforms us to live and love in His name. Amen.